Welcome everyone to another King Reflections podcast episode. It's number 20 today, and we have a special guest down from Victoria, Australia. His name is Ashton Kline, and I met Ashton online through social media about a year ago. And he has been in the nursing industry for 15 years. He's a lecturer for nursing, and he's also a student because he's obviously learning a little bit more. He's an ambassador for Alana and Madeleine Foundation, mainly because he's been brought up in a family domestic violent environment, but he'll go into more detail about that, and it's pretty intense. So just a heads up warning, if it gets too intense, feel free to pause. And we talk about a little bit about his background and about his upbringing and his lifestyle, and just how he came about to self-development and improving his mental health. And we do go into the deep stuff and talk a little bit about the mentalities around mental health. So this was a really good discussion that we had, and just to get into the nitty-gritties about some mentalities, especially on social media. Anyways, I don't want to keep you in any more suspense, so I'm just going to let you jump straight into the episode. So I hope you get something out of it, enjoy it, and king up. All right, welcome, Ashton. Just to give you guys a little bit of context for those that are listening, me and Ashton met over Instagram through another page, a not-for-profit page that's supporting men's health. So we met through there, and yeah, we've known each other for about a year now, I think. Is that right? Yeah. So yeah, welcome, Ashton. How you going?
Yeah, by the way, that's the longest relationship I've ever had. Just so you know.
Excellent.
I'm doing very well, thanks. Thanks for having me, Zena.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
So I'm a lecturer in nursing at Australian Catholic University. I am also, as part of that, obviously a registered nurse, and my background is paediatric intensive care. So I spent 12 years working at the Royal Children's Hospital, nursing, and then decided that I would tackle education, and now have the wonderful task of coordinating clinical placements for 1,200 students across Victoria, which is challenging during COVID times at the moment. But outside of work, who am I is probably, as I was just saying before the recording started, one of the most challenging questions you can ask someone, because I guess it really gets them to think about what encapsulates their life and puts the perspective on them and the onus on them to really describe themselves. And we often rely on others to kind of
100%.
describe us rather than actually think about ourselves. So, but I like to think of myself, I'm a brother. So I have a brother, Grant, who's 27, and I have been his prime carer since the age of 15, when we lost our parents. I am also a puppy daddy, so I have two wonderful chihuahuas, Louie and Blaze. They're two brothers, and I like to we purchased them, two brothers for two brothers.
That's cute.
And I'm also an ambassador for the Alana and Madeleine Foundation, that helps children who are impacted by family violence. Because I grew up in a household that experienced family violence, and I had a childhood that was impacted by family violence, and my father murdered my mother when I was 15, and as a result of that, my brother and I went into foster care when I was 15 and he was 6, and so I have decided to help children who might be in the same situation as I or in similar situations by helping and supporting the foundation that supported both Grant and I when I was 15, and becoming an ambassador for them. So give back in that way. And I do a lot of public speaking for the Alana and Madeleine Foundation, a lot of media coverage for them. And I'm also a student. So I'm currently doing an executive MBA and exciting times.
Excellent.
At the moment.
That's a lot to take in.
Yeah. Let's unpack that as we go.
Yeah. First, I want to start off with, how long have you been in the nursing industry, if that's the right word, or the...
Yeah. So I'm still practicing to this day. So so I'm 36 years old now. So I graduated when I was 21, so 15 years in nursing.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes me feel very old, actually, saying that out loud. And now that it's recorded.
Yeah. So I guess you've seen a lot throughout those 15 years, especially with patients coming in. Also, like you said, you started off with as a carer. Was it
yeah, so I was the carer for my younger brother, who my brother Grant has end-stage kidney disease, and he's had that since birth. And so when my mother passed away, who was his prime carer, I took on the role of caring for him. And so I guess that's really what drove my interest in nursing, and really actually drove my passion for nursing. And actually the story of me becoming a nurse is actually quite interesting one, because there was a point where Grant was being cared for by a particular nurse. His name was Shane. Still remember his name. And Shane, who was only 2 years out of his undergraduate degree, cared for us in such a way that showed such compassion that I was sitting beside Grant in the room, and at that stage I thought that I wanted to be a police officer. And Shane cared for us in such a way that showed such compassion that I looked at the way that Shane was caring for us, and I thought to myself, I want to be Shane. And I want to make a difference in the way that Shane's making a difference to people's lives by demonstrating compassion and care when people are most at their vulnerable. So that changed my whole trajectory in life, I guess. And it's interesting that moment was kind of a defining moment, even though I never expected it to be, in a sense. And Shane will never know, wherever he is today. Hi, Shane, if you're listening. But he will never know that he had that enormous impact on my life and really drove my passion for nursing in that way.
Yeah, 100%. Wow. So then, you said you were 15 when your parents. Did you want to tell us a little bit about, give us a background context of?
Yeah. So as I said, I grew up in a fairly violent household. So from my earliest memories of violence, I guess, kind of the age of 4 and 5, where I would, my dad would be coming home and I would hear the car coming in the driveway, and I would hide under the bed because I didn't know if we were going to get hit, or we were going to have a knife held to our throat, or be abused in a particular way, or whether mum was going to be beaten, etc. So that's kind of, and that kind of continued for a long period of time until my mum separated from my dad when I was 14. And then over the course of kind of 9 months, he plotted her murder and lured her around to his house, and under the pretense of cleaning out a mutually owned caravan that they had, and trying to divvy up some mutually owned property, lured her around to the caravan, but he had premeditated her murder by dousing the caravan in petrol. He pushed her into the caravan, stood at the door and blocked her in, lit a match, threw it into the caravan and then locked the door and drove away. And she died 5 hours later as a result of burns to 99% to her body. We never seen her again. So that period for us was one where in one foul swoop we not only lost our mum, obviously, but we also lost our father, obviously. He was imprisoned immediately and incarcerated, but we also were uprooted from our home 3 days later. So Department of Human Services came in 3 days later, and because we had no adult living with us and we had no family members that could take care of us, they basically came in and said, you'll need to be moved into foster care and removed from this home. And their initial plan was to separate Grant and I. And it's quite ironic, I guess, that the saving grace for Grant and I was that I was the only one that was able to care for him and his dialysis needs. He was undertaking dialysis at home at the time, and I was the only one that knew how to do that. And so that was the only saving grace in keeping us together. Otherwise, they were planning to send Grant to Melbourne, to a foster home in Melbourne, and keep me in country Victoria where it happened. So that immediately threw me into growing up quite quickly and becoming an adult quite quickly. And as a 15-year-old, I was suddenly thrown into being an adult, but with my own kind of teenage issues going on and all of those things that a usual 15-year-old kind of goes through, and having to grapple with Department of Human Services and court dates and then a murder trial that was going on at the time and investigations into that, and having to give evidence at that trial and all of those things that were kind of happening, as well as care for my very vulnerable 6-year-old brother at the time, who relied on me so much. And I think that's why our relationship is so important to me, and remains the one thing that has gotten me through everything, really, because without him and him needing me, I don't think that I would have survived all of that, to be honest. It's funny, I think, in life sometimes the fact that someone needs you and they rely on you sometimes just pulls you through.
Yeah. I mean, I remember you telling me the story before, and it still hits hard, not knowing how much loss and how much struggle, confusion, uncertainty that you would have gone through, especially at such a young age, especially, and as well as your brother at 6 years old, to have his initial carer as his mum, and then now having his brother, which I'm sure at that age, you guys probably didn't have an exceptionally strong relationship, but then it was more of a, now we've got each other, now all we have is each other, which would be...
Yeah, it's interesting because we kind of went from brothers where, we'd fight and we'd argue and we'd do all of those things that brothers kind of do. And, I was 15 and he was 6, and, my little brother would piss me off and, you'd argue and whatever else. But then I became a father, almost at the age of 15, and he became my son almost. And it's funny that we've retained that kind of relationship. And I actually, this is going to sound strange maybe, but I grieve for that loss of a brother regularly, because sometimes I wish that I had a brother rather than a son, and he wishes he had a brother rather than a dad. And it's a really hard dynamic and space to be in when you have that relationship at play, I guess, to be able to chop and change and slip in and out of, especially now that he's a bit older and, we're in different stages of our lives now. He'll always be, for me, unfortunately for him, that vulnerable 6-year-old brother that needs me, and I'll always be the one that he goes to for support and so forth. And so I'm very easily able to slip back into that carer mode, or the helicopter parent mode that I kind of call it, whenever he needs rescuing, I guess. And so it places me in a very, and him in a very difficult predicament in terms of our relationship and our ongoing, relationship kind of dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. What was the foundation that you support? Because they support the Alana. What would you?
Yeah, so the Alana and Madeleine Foundation. So you will remember the Port Arthur incident that occurred in 1999. That occurred where there was mass shooting with a perpetrator literally killing a large number of people in Port Arthur. One of the families that was affected by that was the Mikac family, and Walter Mikac lost his wife and 2 daughters, Alana and Madeleine. And he wanted Alana and Madeleine's memory to remain pertinent in society, and to be at the forefront of people's minds when it came to anyone who experiences violence, to remember that there is hope and that there is support out there. And really that's the fundamental basis of why he decided to create the Alana and Madeleine Foundation. And so in 2000, when our father murdered our mother, we were the first recipients of care under the Children Ahead program that foundation runs, providing social support and advocacy and really helping me to navigate the maze of services and so forth that I was involved in, and case management. So being the first recipient of that, it was I didn't realize how big it was back then and how much of an impact it actually made on my life. But they really had a huge impact in terms of our recovery. And anyone that experiences trauma or family violence, that initial stage of being able to seek support and get support when it's needed is a really pivotal moment, and really imperative to recovery and getting taking the right steps to recovery. So now that I am able to, and in the right space to be able to, it's such an honour to be able to give back in my capacity as an ambassador for that foundation, as someone who's had lived experience with the foundation, because I can share my story with the knowledge and share to donors and so forth of that foundation the impact that the foundation actually had on the lives of Grant and I, letting them know exactly where their money goes and so forth, and the impact that it's had on the lives of Grant and I.
Yeah, so like you're a living testimony of how much this foundation has supported those children in need that have gone through family violence, which is good.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the one thing that I love about the foundation and the work that is done with the Children Ahead program as part of that foundation is that for me, it's about breaking a cycle in family violence, and children who experience family violence often then go on to be the perpetrators of family violence, or experience abuse, or are the perpetrators of abuse later on in life, etc. And so, or experience a life that is less than what they deserve. So breaking the cycle is twofold, in the sense that we want to break the cycle of family violence, but we also want to break the cycle of them feeling as though they are not deserving of a life that they can lead and that they should be able to lead and that they are deserving of, because often people who experience family violence feel that they're not valued and that they're worthy of achievements and so forth.
Yeah. And I guess this comes into play how you're so an advocate so much for mental health as well, because how much physical violence is impacts, but is also impacted by mental health in a sense. So, and that's how we found each other, through a mental health support page on Instagram. So, but sorry.
No, go for it.
I know you continue.
I was going to say, I don't see myself. Other people may view me as an advocate for mental health. I don't necessarily view myself as an advocate for mental health. What I view myself as is someone who experiences mental health, as we all do. That is very aware of his own mental health, and is willing to share his experiences so that others may grow from that. And I think there is and no judgment here on anyone at all in the community. I think anyone that shines a light on mental health is worthy of praise. Let me just put that out there from the get-go. But there are a lot of people who jump on the bandwagon of being an advocate for mental health, who do not have a lived experience, or are not willing to acknowledge that that lived experience should be paramount in how they drive that message, I guess. And so really my advocacy for awareness purely comes from my own experience, and the only way that I should be viewed, and anyone listening to this should not view me as an expert on mental health or anything. I don't claim to be. Really, the only way that I should be viewed is someone who's had experience with their own mental health, and who has an awareness, and who's done a great deal of work in getting to the place that he's got to, with appropriate support, and I'd be more than happy to share those in terms of how I've got there. But that's the only thing that I'm an expert on, is my own mental health. I don't claim to be an expert on anyone else's, and I think that's pertinent in anyone who shares anything in relation to mental health.
Yeah, I do find that as well, that a lot of people are putting out there that they are sharing so much, I guess, opinions or information, especially from studies that are being shown and stuff like that, and forget that everyone has their own individual story, and everyone is their own expert of themselves and what they've experienced, and that their experience is obviously going to be completely different to how someone else perceives what they've experienced, if that makes sense. So how me perceiving the story that you're telling me, I still can't comprehend how much trauma you went through and how much you experienced each emotion in that in the grieving process as well. So I'm not an expert on your story, only you are.
And nor should you be expected to, I think, and that's the important thing to remember, is that trauma, mental health, whatever it may be, it's relative to the person and should remain relative to the person, in my view. So there is, whilst empathy should be at the forefront of everyone's mind always, and displaying empathy so that we can begin to understand, and only begin to understand, because we can never fully understand. We can never fully understand, because anyone's experience of mental health or what is going to work for them is going to be relative to them and their experiences. So it would be, I think, actually counterproductive for us for anyone to apply generalist, vague, or idealistic views to the general population in the hope that it would help everyone. We can only learn from everyone's. It's like I say to my students that there are in classes. There are bits that there are some teachers that will offer you certain things in certain ways. You take little bits from each teacher in order to build your own nursing career. And that's exactly how mental health, in my view, should be approached, in that you take tools, I'm going to call them tools, from people that you come across and enter your life, and you learn what strategies and what tools work for you best in order to grow and personally develop and gain an understanding and insight into your own mental health. If you see, because often as humans we want a quick fix to things, so we want an idealistic generalist, study that might be published, or a claim that this worked for this person. So we think, that that will work for me.
Exactly.
And then we find out very quickly that a one-size-fits-all approach is not appropriate for mental health, or doesn't in fact work. So the only way to approach it is that certain components of what's being offered by whoever it may be in a post might work, or in a webinar or a seminar or something like that might actually work for certain individuals, but not in its entirety for every single individual.
100%.
It's a little like the magical weight loss pill. It's the quick fix. It sounds enticing, but really all you need to do is eat less and move more. And that put in that hard work. And I think mental health is exactly the same. It's a long-standing, routine-driven process of constant work, and there are ebbs and flows in mental health that mean that you fluctuate up and down, and we have to learn to live with those fluctuations. And that's the only way that I've been able to really gain insight into my own mental health, is by learning to sit with each emotion as it comes into my life. So if I, for example, in my 20s, I had very poor insight into my mental health. And if I was feeling quite down or feeling quite anxious, I used to really analyze that in my head to a point where I would punish myself in my head. So I would wonder why I was feeling like that, and I would really analyze it to the point where I would torture myself with the emotions of, why is this happening to me? Why am I different? Why am I experiencing this emotion? And that in itself was torturous, and it didn't actually allow for the experience of emotion that we as humans simply need to feel. I take the approach now, and it's honestly only been the last 4 or 5 years that I've actually taken this approach after many failed attempts, of trying to gain not control, but trying to gain an understanding of how best to, move and allow and operationalize emotions, I guess, because we have to realize as humans that emotions do fluctuate and they change on a regular basis, and we can't, as a society, expect that 100% of the time we will be happy, engaged, energetic individuals. And there is an expectation, I don't know how you feel about this, Sandra, but there is an expectation, especially with social media, that that everyone is out there, is happy, living their best life, energetic, and not feeling any emotions whatsoever other than happiness and a zest for life. But actually, what I've learned to do is I have shit days on the regular, and I have shit hours on the daily, and what I do during those periods is I allow myself to sit with those emotions, and I actually hold them and I acknowledge them, and I say, I'm actually feeling really dark at the moment, and what I need is to close myself off for a moment. Often hold my chihuahuas and just be in the moment. And it's amazing what just being present with that emotion and allowing yourself to feel it. It's definitely uncomfortable to start with, but just feeling it and allowing yourself to hold it and sit with it for an hour, 2 hours, or overnight, or even 2 days sometimes, a week sometimes, whatever, depending on the caliber of what's happened. Allowing yourself to do that, you come out the other end just so refreshed and renewed, and with an increased capacity to deal with things. So, what's your thoughts on that?
The same thing with what you were saying about. Well, let's go back to how you were saying, because I'm guilty of this sometimes, and this more prominent probably a few years ago, where I would use the one quick fix one thing, and usually mine would be because for me, when I was a teenager, mine was writing in a journal. I have like 15 little mini journals where I'd write poems and write my feelings in and express them through poetry. And I would tell everyone, like, and when a study came out, saying like creative writing or a creative process of any sort, like video editing or, script writing, poetry, novel writing, anything form of writing, and even just journaling at night actually helps relieve stress, anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. And I would tell that to as many people as I can, like, especially any that would promote or would not promote, but would explain that they're feeling any sense of anxiousness or anything. So like, dude, you got to just write in a journal. And learned probably really slowly, not very quickly, very slowly, I learned that how much my ego was overdriven and my self-righteousness was overridden by ego. That I'll tell people, but then they'll do, like, for example, they'll try it once, but like, no, it's not for me. And I'll be like, well, you're putting yourself in your own pit. When realizing everyone, like you said, everyone's different of how they cope or how they deal with their mental health, and they need to figure out for themselves what process best suits them. And I find a lot of times, obviously, especially being in the gym, a lot of time it's guys going to the gym and exerting their energy, their mental energy through physical energy, and they just want to physically exert all that tension, all that anxiousness, and once they're out of the gym, they're fine for that hour, after that hour. So but definitely, again, with the social media, there's a lot of this presence where it's all about
I'll just say on that point as well, that sometimes we have to accept that not everybody wants to be helped. Sometimes people just actually want to share that they're experiencing something without us fixing that, or without us, our innate kind of notion as human beings is that we want to take away anyone's pain that they're experiencing. That's kind of ingrained within us as humans, because we have that emotional connection with people. That empathy, I guess, is that we want to put a silver lining around things and kind of turn it around for them, because and using what has worked for us is one way that we can do that. But in order to do that, we have to recognize, in order to be successful in doing that, we have to recognize that not everyone actually wants that. Some people are actually quite happy saying, I'm in a shit space in my life right now. I just want to blur it out with you. And I don't want you to suggest anything. I don't want you to, try and fix it, because sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too, is trying to take away something or trying to suggest something. Sometimes people just need to verbalize it, and that is their fix. Do you know what I mean? That is there, but it can become counterproductive sometimes, where people start going over and over it with multiple people, and then they're just actually perpetuating the anxiety or whatever it might be that they're experiencing. And that can be a thing, but sometimes they don't need to be fixed as such, or they just actually need to vent, and that's okay. But because I think, you and I are similar in that we spend so much time working on ourselves that we assume that everyone wants to be in that light, and it's difficult for us because not everyone does, and not everyone's happy to kind of reflect on themselves in the way that we do. So, or they don't want to. Yeah,
I feel that's the same. It's a lot of people just want to verbalize and get it out there, and it's sometimes. Sorry, I talk really fast sometimes when there's 100 thoughts going through my head. But you're
talking to someone with ADHD. It's all good.
Excellent. So you catch every word I say. Excellent. I find when I was, especially even 2 years ago, my ego trip of along the lines of wanting to fix them, but I would have to learn and go, who am I really to put myself in such a high established place or on a pillar to think that I have the power to fix them, when really they only have the ability to really fix themselves. It's upon them to take the responsibility to fix themselves. I can obviously make suggestions and advice, and I even 2 years ago, I would get upset when people didn't take that advice on and didn't progress or didn't move forward. And I would be like, you came to me asking for some advice. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. I'd give you advice. You don't take that advice on, and you're not progressing. So why do you keep complaining about your life? And I think it was just my self-righteous egotism, thinking that I was on a higher place, when really it's just like, no, I'm not on a higher place at all. Like, I'm just on my own journey and they're on their own journey.
I don't think it's necessarily you being on putting yourself on a pedestal as such, but I think it is frustrating sometimes when you put a great deal of work into self-improvement, and you work very, very hard to acknowledge, I guess, emotional growth, and work, hard with emotional growth. But then you see other people who are not willing to put that work in sometimes when they desperately need to.
100%.
The point that I guess, and it's very frustrating when there are people that constantly complain and so forth, when you're like, well, I've told you like 20 times, this is perhaps the pathway that you need to commence on, that you need to change your perspective in order to, commence a change on this part. But the thing that I've realized, and that's very hard for me, because I'm a natural teacher, I teach, and I've been lecturing now for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And so for me, when someone comes to me with an issue, I want to teach. That's my natural inclination, is to teach and to draw. And so if I've learned something in my life, I want to impart that knowledge on with someone else and kind of share that. But we have to realize that not everyone wants to accept what we have to offer in what I call the marketplace of life. Like we kind of go to these marketplaces where you're selling some advice and someone else is selling some advice, and it's really up to the individual whether or not they buy and whether they have enough money to buy, and in terms of, if we're talking, marketplaces, commodities, whether they have the gold to buy what you're selling, or whether they actually are interested in the fruit that you're selling, et cetera, et cetera. It's really, when you put it in those terms, it makes a lot of sense. But the other thing that I realized, and I said that, up until kind of 4 years ago, really, I didn't manage emotionally very well. I actually managed my emotions by overeating, not exercising, chugging down a pack of Dunhill Blue a day, and drinking too much whiskey until my health got to a point where I was 137 kilos. I really had warning signs of diabetes. I had warning signs of liver failure, and there were lots of other health issues kind of starting to appear for me. I couldn't walk up one flight of stairs without kind of getting out of breath,
Yeah, wow, yeah.
And then I made a change in my life that was well overdue. I changed a number of things that were needing to be changed in order to allow me to move forward. And it doesn't matter what they were, but because I'm not going to let people buy into the one-size-fits-all approach by listening to this, but the thing was that those changes put me in the right mindset to be able to address the core issues of what was causing my mental health to decline. And what I realized at that point, when I started to change things for myself and really started to see that health overall, physical, mental, social, is actually all so interlinked. And unless we address it all together,
100%.
In combination, we're actually never going to get balance. So I took the approach of exercising. I changed my diet in balance. I started seeing a psychologist every fortnight. I started seeing a psychiatrist once a month. I started walking every day. I listened to James Smith book and started taking tips from him in terms of just little steps to increase my daily activity. So things like parking the car further away from the supermarket, to increase calorie output, calories in versus calories out. So from a physical perspective, things changed as well. But the mental health stuff, I realized that all I needed was to be in the right space to be able to address, to start to address, because I'll never, and I would hate to think that anyone would say and make the claim that they are totally 100% mentally healthy, because I think that would be a lie, to be honest, because or they're fooling themselves, and they need a real reality check if they say that, and they're probably avoiding something, but I needed to be in the right space in order to start to address or begin to address what it was that I was avoiding my entire life. And it wasn't until that I was in the right space to be able to do that and the right mindset of I can tackle this one step at a time. It's going to be a very slow process, but I need to have patience with myself, and I need to acknowledge that the end game of personal growth is what I'm aiming for here, and not a quick fix. And when I got into that mindset, my whole world changed. My relationships changed, my interactions changed with people, my ability to exercise changed. I had motivation. I learned I still have emotions. I still have shit days, like I said, and I still have to go to bed and just shut off from the world and cuddle my chihuahuas, but I acknowledge those, I hold them, and then I move on, and I have the capacity to do that because I'm not afraid to deal with the ebbs and flows of my emotions. And it's not until someone's able to do that, I believe, that they're truly in a space that they can really grow.
Yeah. I did even come across, for the past 2 or 3 months, reading books and listening to podcasts, that concept of being in the space. Like when you go to do, and we'll just compare this with physically working out, you physically go to, if you go to the gym, a physical space where it's set and prepared to make you feel safe in that area, but to also push and exert yourself to tear those muscle fibers, and they've got machines there that if you're used properly, they're safe. But if they're not used properly, they're quite dangerous.
And you've got to think of the brain in a similar way.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. You have to put yourself in a safe space so that you can experiment or push your boundaries of where you need to be to grow. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people don't allow themselves to be put in that space. Like you said, you ate or you drank, you used other coping mechanisms probably in a sense.
I took drugs as well. I'll be honest about that. I took, it was, I thought I was living a life that was fun, but actually what I was doing is just avoiding dealing with my emotions, and I thankfully didn't get to a point with any drug taking that it was what I guess would be classed as a clinical addiction, but certainly for parties and things like that, I certainly engaged in drug taking behavior, and that's something that I'm actually very disappointed in myself for, because the reason for taking those is what I'm disappointed in. It's not the fact that I took drugs, because I actually don't have an issue with people engaging in drug taking behavior if they're doing it for the right reasons. But that's another debate that we could have. We'll leave that one for another podcast. But the reasons that I was taking those drugs was to escape what I was actually trying to avoid, and I was trying to avoid dealing with my emotions and what I was carrying. And so the escape mechanism of all of those elements of alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, food, etc., they were crutches. They were my emotional tool belt instead of psychology, counseling, medications, physical activity, social support structures, acknowledging the emotions that I need to acknowledge, and just being me, acknowledging that I am good enough and that the world will accept Ashton Kline, regardless of whether it wants to or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's, and now that I live with that and I have that notion in my life every day that I am what I am, and it's, and I just live in the present. It's a far better life. I tell you, it's a far better life. I'm no longer anxious about the past. I'm no longer anxious about the future. It's purely about, we deal with what we need to deal with, and we'll deal with it as it arises. Exactly. And it's such a such a good space to be in. There's a book that I was reading recently, and I think I might have shared it on my Instagram, but it's called The Alchemist. And but there's a quote in there that says, basically, I don't live in either my past or my future. I'm interested only in the present. And if you can concentrate always on the present, you'll be a happy man. Life will be a party for you, a grand festival, because life is the moment we're living now. And I just love that, because everything that I was living previously was either the past or the future. I was either worried about the future or I was living in the past. I was never actually present with the here and now. And now that I am, life is a party, but not the party that I used to go to, taking cocaine and ecstasy. It's a totally different party.
Yes, definitely. And I
a
find
party that I never. Yeah, the party's much better. There's no come down either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like the party is no longer needing to be with people. It's more like, I'm just happy to be with myself, really.
Yeah, and well, it's interesting because when I am with people, I don't need the enhancements of cocaine, stimulants, etc., that I used to need to get over the social anxiety, etc., of being around people. So it's now people are like, "Are you high?" And I'm like, "Nope, just actually happy."
That's it.
Funny. It's 10 a.m. I'm not on cocaine. So funny.
All right, so it's close to the time that you said you needed to go.
Yes. Yeah, sorry. I've talked too much.
I got three random quick questions.
Ooh.
If you had, wait 1 second. If you could choose 3 superpowers, what would they be and why?
Ooh. Are they like, okay, can I get some clarity? Because I always like to delve a little. I know they were quick questions, I'm sorry, but there's no such thing in my mind.
Any superpowers?
Are these like superpowers that I can make up, or are they superpowers like the typical ones, like it's got to be like invisibility or something, like something typical like that.
Yeah. Any.
Because you're talking to a atypical person here. So. All right.
I'm scared now.
Yeah. No. Well, superpower. So 3, right?
Yep. 3.
So superpower number 1 would be actually quite a funny one. So it would be to be able to force people's cameras on in Zoom classes. Because I just want engagement with people, right? I seek engagement.
So you're saying that when you're in a class, everyone's got their cameras off sometimes, and you're there going, "Come on, put your camera on. I want to see you."
And I'm talking about life. Like this is also a thing with life. So this is one big umbrella superpower with me, right? Okay. It's like the power to force engagement is the umbrella term. All right. So not only do I want to turn on people's Zoom cameras when they're in a Zoom meeting, I also want people to bloody pick up their phones, like when you call them and they don't have your number. All right. Because people screen their phones like no tomorrow now, and they expect you to send them a message. And it's like, no, just talk to me, like we can engage as humans. Like we could have a conversation. Like, come on. Like I was trying to set up a meeting with someone recently, and I said, "Oh yeah, let's jump on Zoom." Oh no! I don't want to jump on Zoom. That's like too confronting. I'll jump on a call between these times and this time, And I was like, oh, you're kind of taking the excitement out of it for me. You know, I kind of don't want to engage with you. I think you're, you know, maybe a bit of a dick because I don't really know this person, but I'm like, if you can't take ownership of yourself in terms of facing me and engaging in eye contact and being a human, then I don't know if I want to know you, you know, like I don't know this person well enough to be able to judge yet, but I'm like, just be you and, you know, take ownership of that. Cause I'm always like, here's a Zoom link. Let's jump on Zoom, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what it has always been, especially with face-to-face, like we're missing out on that so much. So Zoom is like a blessing.
Yeah. Well, I kind of think, were these people like hiding in their rooms before, you know?
Probably.
I don't know. Yeah.
They just don't have their makeup on, so they're just like, oh, I can't do it now.
Well, no, because it's not engagement it's disengagement to a new level. That's what I see. Like, especially as a lecturer, I'm like, they are just like not engaging at all. I'm like, wow. Anyway, so force engagement.
So that superpower is actually a thing where you can, if you're talking about technology, especially.
Oh, don't tell me that there's a thing that you can do, right?
Yeah, that's actually a superpower. I don't know what the term is, like tell us something, but I don't know what the actual term is. But there is an ability to do that. Yeah. Second superpower.
Second superpower. Look, I'm a very sexual person, so I just want the ability to like X-ray vision, like, and see.
Oh, so you want Superman's X-ray vision? Sure, no worries.
Yeah, but yeah. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, we won't go into. Yeah, that'd be cool. And the third one, the ability to be an ear on the wall. So I'm not going to say a fly on the wall, but an ear on the wall in any place. So to tap into any conversation, because knowledge is power. So you know, yep. There we go. What a range of superpowers, and what a powerful being I would be with those.
It's like no privacy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've breached every privacy law there is in existence.
Exactly.
But I will use it. Constrained, I promise. Except the second one. That one will just be used everywhere.
Yes. I just imagine that's probably the pinnacle one, and then you would use the other powers to take advantage.
Well, I didn't actually want to put that as number one because that was the most important, but I thought I'll decrease the value of that by putting it as number two, just to take you off that one. Yeah.
Yep, sure, no worries. Okay. Question number 2, really quickly. 3. We're having a pizza and movie night. Yeah. And you can invite 3 guests, and they can be dead or alive. Who would you invite?
Gough Whitlam.
Okay.
Yep. A bit of a politics kind of enthusiast, I guess. So loved a bit of Gough Whitlam, and loved his approach to. Are you going to use
on him too, or?
Just doesn't do it for me in that way. As a bisexual man,
like everyone that you're going to invite, I'm there going, oh no.
Look, so God, here I am trying to be serious, you know. So we got Gough Whitlam.
Yeah.
We have also got my brother.
Yep.
And we've also got John Kudus, who I've met a couple of times actually. He was born without legs, and he experienced an enormous amount of being and so forth through his childhood. I remember one story he was telling me one day. He was thrown into a primary school, and it was lit on fire by children in the playground. He he also had testicular cancer when he was growing up. And one of the funniest stories that he ever told me was he came out on stage at a conference that I was at. This is when I first met him, before I met him personally. And he came out and he said, I had testicular cancer, and yes, I've lost both my nuts. My wife and I are currently trying to have a baby. Now, unfortunately, I'm shooting blanks, but gee, it's fun trying. That's good. He's kind of my kind of guy in terms of he's got a dark humor about things, and really that humor gets you through life. As I have dem, I think, to you over the year I've known you.
Yes, definitely. All right, and last question: one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Be you much earlier.
Yeah.
Because the happiness that I'm experiencing now being, I don't regret, but I'm disappointed that I didn't get to experience that happiness sooner. And it's only come with an acknowledgement that I can actually be me, and being me is not something that I should be ashamed of. And for years, I tried to be someone else. And that ultimately led to depression, anxiety, and a suicide attempt. It almost destroyed me. And what I would say now is don't be afraid of actually being different. Being different in today's world is something that should be embraced and celebrated, because in a world where everyone is the same and everyone seeks to be the same, diversity is actually something that needs to be celebrated. And my favourite thing to say at the moment is with unity comes diversity.
Yes. You do say that quite often, which is good. It is good. It needs to be reinforced, I feel. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. It's a great conversation.
Thank you.
Great to get to know you a little bit
great.
more.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And I'll see you around.
Likewise. Thanks, mate.
No
Cheers.
worries.